Read. Hopefully this will be the final part 5 of the reading of Taken Inside the Alien Human Abduction Agenda by Dr. Karla Turner Ph.D. I find it fascinating to read myself. Not that I believe that what she's dealing with, or I think it might be a possibility that it's a false labeling of calling these things aliens. I don't know what you guys think, but I've read a lot of books of late. Trying to see how many have I read. Well, it was Why UFOs, Synchronicity, Passport to Magonia, Our Haunted Planet. I'm doing a lot of reading from John A. Keel. In fact, the next reading I'm going to do is The Eighth Tower. Messengers of Deception from Jack Vallée. Strange Creatures from Time and Space, another one of John A. Keel's books. The Devil and His Works. And then, of course, we did I'm uploading now the readings of the Abominable Snowmen from Sanderson. And what is the other one? I write so many of them. It's quite a few books. Not as many as I like. You easily triple your time reading out loud. Especially like me, struggling through it. But I'm going to do it anyways, even if it doesn't draw anybody. I've always said it's about my research more than popularity contest. Although I'm going to have to figure out how to make some money. But I don't know how that's going to happen. Anyways, I guess I went back to bed. On now page 126. And this is Casey talking to Karla, the author, about some of the high strangeness and the connection with UFOs and quote-unquote aliens. And he's talking about how he has some kind of supposed dream connected at all. He says here, I guess went back to bed, he said, but I honestly don't remember doing it. And his response was curiously passive, as mine had been. This time I noticed and determined to be more alert if anything else were to occur, to fight the passive effect in order to react the way I thought best, rather than the way outside force directed me. In April, I also had a nighttime event, much less dramatic as Casey's sighting of an orb, but nonetheless inexplicable. At 1:14 a.m., I woke hearing the sound of a C-130 plane, with which I am familiar as training flights for the nearby military base. Have regular paths over this area. The plane sounded as if it was just coming directly overhead at an extremely low altitude. My first reaction was irritation at the thoughtlessness of training flights at such an intrusive hour. I'll phone the base in the morning and complain, I thought, as I lay there with Casey soundly asleep beside me. But seconds and then minutes elapsed, and the noise of the C-130 did not waver, increase, or diminish. It couldn't be hovering, I thought, but that's exactly how it sounded, as if a C-130 was motionless low over the house. And a normal state of consciousness, which I really thought I had, I would have awakened Casey to hear it too, but I didn't. Instead, 6 or 7 minutes after the first hearing it, I just fell asleep. It didn't occur to me to resist. For over a year, I have kept the attitude that I wouldn't acknowledge alien contact back in my life, our lives, without strong, overt experiences. I had also been praying in my fashion to whatever good and loving and true higher force may be out there, asking for 2 things: that they guide me to know and follow the power of goodness, and that they communicate with me in an overt manner, without any substantiality or ambiguity, without any subtlety or ambiguity. I prayed for help, for information that would be clear enough for a child to understand, as I realized my level of understanding and perception were about that rudimentary in dealing with the aliens. I wanted a communication that couldn't be dismissed, variously interpreted, or ambiguous as to its nature. On May 10, 1993, I may have gotten a partial answer to that prayer, although great caution is called for in assessing any contacts before accepting them at face value. This particular contact confirmed exactly to other abductees' descriptions of the VRS dream, and was the first of its kind I had experienced to such a degree. I was in the middle of a normal dream when suddenly I was somehow removed from that dream and found myself sitting in a chair in a darkened area, accompanied by entities I wasn't allowed to see. They spoke to me clearly and frequently throughout the event. I was facing a small stage area, which I now feel was more holographic than solidly three-dimensional, even though at the time it looked quite realistic. My host told me I was to watch a scenario played out on the stage. It began with a scene from Genesis in which Esau returned home feeling so hungry he feared he would die. His younger brother Jacob was sitting there eating a bowl of pottage, and Esau begged him to share it. Jacob said he would give Esau the food, but only in exchange for Esau's birthright as the oldest son of Isaac. I heard Esau say, it won't do me any good to have the birthright if I die of starvation, so I'll agree to trade it for the food. this is going to go. Then the scenario on stage changed to another part of the brother's story. The second scene, Isaac was very old and blind and knew he was close to death. He called for Esau to be brought to him to receive a laying on of hands that would confer the inheritance. Jacob wrapped an animal skin around his arms and presented it. We did more than that, by the way. She's missing some of that. Presented it to his father's touch. Isaac felt the fur and believed it was the arm of a very hairy eldest son. Hairy like a goat, by the way. It describes a hairy man. So, in his ignorance of this deception, he conferred the blessing and gave Jacob that which rightfully belonged to Esau. The play ended, and then it started right up again, playing out several more times as my host discussed its meaning with me. At various points they would stop the action, such as we paused a videotape and would point out some specific details and tell me what it meant, what it symbolized, and what the message was trying to convey. They told me not to focus on the biblical aspect of the play. Their message had nothing to do with any actual Jacob or Esau, but that the story was designed to illustrate important information about what the aliens are doing with humans, both in the past and present. The host went through the play with me several times, pointing out details and saying things like, okay, let's try it again, now watch closely, and the play would proceed. After several repetitions, I suddenly woke up in my bed, amazed by what I had just seen. I got out of bed for a while, trying to discern the nature of the event, whether the dreamlike or externally generated. I also pondered on the meaning of the scenario. When I lay back down, as soon as I touched the pillow, I was suddenly back in the chair, facing the stage. My host said we would now resume. Once again, the play began running, as did the explication offered by my abductors. And when they apparently were satisfied, the action ceased, and the abductors gave me a clearly delineated summary of the things I was meant to perceive. Esau, the older, hairier brother, they explained, represents the original human species on the planet, or could it be Bigfoot? Sasquatch. Jacob represents the altered product of alien genetic manipulation of the older species. I recognize that. Aliens produced the new variant and then used it to replace the original form, and that's what we've been doing all this time. That's why we've been wiping these hominids out. In our current situation, I'm adding some of that. That's some of my intake. In our current situation, the aliens are once again doing genetic alterations of our species and are once again trying to produce a variant which will be more useful for their purposes and which will supplant us. Again, it will be the attempted through deception as Jacob deceived Isaac. This deception, I was told, is being carried out by the aliens through exploitation and manipulation of the global events, including weather phenomenon, to make us believe the planet is in imminent danger of cataclysm and destruction. This is why they impress the idea of coming destruction upon so many abductees, telling them they will have the task to perform at that time. They wanted us as a race to be so afraid of this upcoming destruction that when they show themselves openly and offer to save us from us in some way, we will be willing to take their help, even if it means giving up our birthright, so to speak, which is preeminence on this planet. Like Esau in his hunger, we will say, what good does it do us to keep our birthright if we're all going to be destroyed along with the planet? What we have got to lose if we accept alien help, even though that means accepting alien control. Better to survive under subjugation than not at all. But my host stressed that this is all a deception, that our planet without their intervention is not in imminent danger. These terrible disasters we see, the flooding, hurricanes, and earthquakes, are sometimes being intensified by the very aliens who will then come in and offer to save us from inevitable destruction. We should not believe them. I was told emphatically, we must not surrender our sovereignty to them, as that would mean we were truly lost forever. After this, I knew nothing more until waking in the morning, very disturbed by what I'd been shown. I had no way of identifying the source of this event, and never caught in a glimpse of my abductors. They said behind me in the dark. I couldn't deduce anything about the event from my past encounters, because this one was completely different. I knew I had been taken away. I hadn't been taken anywhere, because I woke up consciously in the midst of the experience and was able to check my physical surroundings. And there was no doubt in my mind that during the encounter I was not asleep. In fact, I remember being so awake when I was removed to the chair that I thought, how can they snatch me right out of a dream like that? The experience seemed designed in some way to fulfill a request I made for the straightforward, clearly comprehensible communication that would be helpful. They must have taken me at my literal word, for the message was reinforced in every conceivable way, visually, repetitiously, and verbally. So did that mean I could accept it as coming from a benevolent source? Could I test or trust its accuracy? All I could do finally was hold the message and reserve and compare it to the events that occur as time passes. At least parts of what they told me I really knew to be true. The aliens do make a practice of giving abductees information about a coming time of destruction or change. With the many natural disasters of recent time, it is an easy message to believe, and they have engaged in what appears to be genetic processes for years, according to abduction accounts, as well as taking credit time and time again for the creation of the human species. But even these two facts I still had to question, because in either case could we objectively verify the activities. Things around our house went back to normal after that until the middle of July, when a series of odd noises started to plague us. We heard Everything from large plastic ware, non-existent, of course, shattering on our wooden floors, into gigantic invisible woodpeckers hammering away in the living room. Things got even stranger one evening in August when Casey and I had a parallel and infuriating experience. I heard him ask me a question, and when I turned around to answer him, instead he answered it himself. Both of us heard the other one ask the question. It turned out, although neither of us had even been thinking about the subject. Throughout August and September, there was an undercurrent of tension in our lives that felt just as it had back in 1988. After alien contact had renewed with Casey, but before he was consciously aware of it, his usual coping mechanism for work and personal concerns seemed impaired, so that almost every interaction was stressful. The stress was affecting me, too, leading to recurrent insomnia and sleep disruptions. I started doing something I'd never done in the past, leaving my bed and Casey to try to rest elsewhere. Sometimes I'd lie on the couch with the dogs nearby on another couch, and sometimes were wrapped up in a blanket and slept fitfully on the guest bed. There were no conscious events to show that anything suspicious was occurring, but the insomnia was not normal, and neither was my willingness to be separated from Casey. We weren't in step with each other or comfortable with ourselves in those weeks. I became worried as the situation seemed to go on, but I couldn't pick up any clue from Casey about his thoughts. Given all that had happened in the past months, I should have asked him if he thought the stress indicated suppressed memories of new contacts, but I was honestly afraid to ask and risk a confrontation with something that felt so heavy and ominous. If it was Casey who broke the silence one night as we drove home from visiting friends, and in the quiet of the evening drive, he began to talk after a long period of silence, seriously and very tentatively. I could feel he was searching for a way to be both confiding with me and reassuring of my feelings at the same time. What he told me were the details of two dreams. The first one had occurred in early September, but he hadn't told me at the time. When the second one occurred later in the month, however, he had described it to me the next morning. I recall he said we were a team of detectives in the dream, and then he sketched out the details of our pursuit of two suspects. We had chosen to follow one of them, a woman, but when we caught up with her, we realized she was innocent, and that the other suspect was the guilty party. I think it was a symbolic message. He told me that morning, I think it was telling me that you and I are on the right path and this work with the abduction situation. We're following the truth. That's what the beautiful woman we caught represented. In our talk in the car, Casey began by telling me about the first dream from early September, and I could see why he had been reluctant to discuss it. Something's been going on, he said. I want to tell you about it. I had a dream earlier this month. It woke me up, and I looked at the clock. It was around 4 a.m. I thought there would be plenty of sleep time left so I wouldn't be tired when I got up from work. Satisfied, I rolled over and started to drift off when I remembered what the dream was about. And I noticed then, and only then, that my heart was still pounding faster than usual. I thought there must have been something to that dream, so I tried to remember more. There was a strong odor of spice, sweet and strong scent of fear in the dream. I think I was nude, and so was this woman who was sending out fear and pain signals. She seemed to be very confused and upset by the situation. I felt dazed and angry and dazed by whatever control was being exerted on my mind to get me into this situation, and angry at being in this situation in the first place. I felt pity and sorrow for her, so I held her gently and tried to calm her down. I tried to talk normally, and that seemed to reassure her and give her back some sense of control. When she calmed down, I awoke, and immediately I remember now, I smelled the air to see if there was any scent from the dream left on me, but there wasn't. Did you recognize the woman? I asked. Do you know her? Yeah, Casey said, naming a casual acquaintance with whom we've never had any social involvement. I really tried to think it was just a dream, he said, and that maybe I was going through some sort of midlife mental quack, but I don't think that's it. Anyway, I didn't tell you about it because I didn't want to worry you, but after the second dream, I kept this quiet. I can't keep this quiet anymore. Why? I asked. What was it something awful? No, he said. It wasn't a bad dream. Do you remember me telling you the dream where we were the detectives? Yes, I replied, recalling the conversation quite clearly. Well, that was the dream, Casey continued. I told you about it at breakfast, and we talked about whether it was symbolic, and I really thought it was until 2 days ago. What happened? I asked. I was in the mall with a friend for lunch, he said, and we had eaten, and we were heading around to the escalator, and then this woman came around the corner dressed in all black. She was blonde, genuine blonde, and her skin matched the color eyes too. She looked at me, started to lift up her arms, and said, hello. Then she seemed to get really confused and walked on past me. What did you do then? I asked. Did you go after her to talk to her? No, he said. We went up the escalator, and when I got to the top, I turned and looked back down there, and she was still there, looking very disoriented. And then she walked off slowly. So what did you have to do with, what does that have to do with the dreams? I wondered. That woman in the mall, Casey said, was the same woman I saw in the detective dream. That was her in the flesh. I recognized her immediately, and I swear she acted like she recognized me too. You know how you'll reach out to hug a friend you know you haven't seen in a long time? That's how it was. And when she reached for me, I was starting to reach for her too. What do you think is going on? I asked. What does this mean? I don't know, he replied. I thought that was just a dream, but there was a real woman, so now I don't know if the first one was a dream either. That was a bad situation. Do you remember anything specifically sexual happening in the first one? I asked, thinking of the encounters of other abductee reports. I didn't see anything like that happen, Casey told me. I only saw us kneeling in front of each other, nude and scared and angry. We were in a circle of bright light that came from somewhere above us, and everything outside of that was too dark to see. But I sensed it was a very large room. Something could have gone on, either before that or after. I just don't remember. How did you feel while it was happening? I didn't feel sexual. It was more a very deep sorrow because the woman was in such terrible panic and fear and pain. It was so thick I could almost grab it in the air. All that emotion, all I wanted to do was make her feel better and give her some comfort, and that's what I remember doing, just holding her and talking. Have you seen her, in person since the dream? I asked. Yeah, he said. So how did she seem? Did she say anything? No, she didn't say a word. I passed her in the stairway, and she looked at me very intently. I think her face even turned red, and then she looked down at the stairs and went on by. Does she usually say hello when you see each other? Yes, she always been friendly in the past, Casey said. I don't know why she acted like that, unless the whole thing wasn't really a dream. But there is no way I can ask her about it. We don't know each other that well at all. We don't have a clue as to finding the woman in the mall. I remarked, wishing we could ask her if she really remembered the incident in Casey's dream. No, I never saw her before, he said, but we had a connection when we were looking at each other. A very strong connection. I looked at her, and then it was like I was inside her head, her eyes, looking back at myself. I could feel her in a way that she really is a good person. She's not responsible. Very cryptic. Almost like, do you have sex with her? Oh yeah, I don't want to tell my wife I had a dream and had sex with her. Oh my God. You cheated on me. Damn it. What's going on? Okay. I am screwing this up. Why was it? I cannot get this blue thing off. Is that deliberate? It can't be deliberate because that's Nothing's different. Well, son of a bitch. Well, that's what we'll do. I am so itchy today. Oh, fuck. For whatever might have happened, if anything really did. That was the question we were always left to face. The nature of an event's reality. In some reports, two people have separately recalled being in an identical dream or situation, and in those cases, the people involved can feel more certain of the dream or event's objective reality. But it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes one person will have a traumatic experience involving another person, and the reality of the event is so convincing that the experiencer believes the other person was truly involved, no matter how impossible time and location consideration may seem. Granted, there is plenty of evidence for aliens' ability to manipulate time and space, so the objective reality of such events cannot automatically be dismissed. But there is also hard evidence that the aliens are masters of illusion, total sensory, heart-wrenching illusion generated by an external mechanism. And when an abductee is in an altered state, the illusion is very convincing to his controlled perception. Probably this is what I just went through there, is some more fuckery. Anyways, but then again, it's probably not. This lesson has been brought home by the extraordinary VSR involving Amelia, that Ted and Mary witnessed in 1991, and now I was seeing, possibly with my husband's bewildered emotions, just how masterful the alien deception mechanism can be. For Amelia, the event had been a virtual reality solo flight, the external product of or result of the Blue Sphere technology and its creators. Knowing this, I wondered if Casey's dreams were objective or virtual experiences, a product of some similar technology, and so did he. The only thing he knew to be real was the nameless woman he came face to face with in the mall. This experience, all of our experiences and those of the 8 women recounted here, define the abduction phenomena. It is complex, ambiguous, deceptive, inconsistent, traumatic, physical, metaphysical, with no single or clear purpose. There are patterns and possibilities, but none so plainly verifiable that everyone can agree on the facts, much less the larger truth of the agenda. I'm going to highlight that because that pretty much defines the whole damn thing. This experience and all experience and those of the 8, that's it. It's just a big giant show is what it is. One big giant emotional roller coaster ride of bullshit. But I don't think it's wise to simply dismiss it out of hand simply because it seems to be total BS, right? I think we should take what they're saying a little bit more seriously. That's my opinion. It's just not just it's total gibberish, nonsense. Okay, if all that Casey and I knew about alien abductions was limited to our own experiences, we would have a very different picture of the situation, and we would be much more vulnerable to alien manipulations or programmings in our ignorance. It is only when we consider our experiences within the larger context of Amy's experiences and Beth's and Lisa's and the experience of thousands of other abductees that we gain enough knowledge to get past the personal illusions, and it is only by giving up our wishful ideas and facing the data squarely that any of us can hope to penetrate to the actuality of these events, to come to terms with what is rather than what we wish it to be. I should just copy both of those. Comparative chart of experiences. Let's see, robed, hooded. That's very interesting. Jesus figure, 2 people had out of the 5, the 4 there. Is there more? That might be a good thing to actually discuss. Not in this reading, but maybe in a live. Why? Because the connection with religion is shocking. But it has UFO sightings, childhood missing time, adult missing time, conscious encounter, virtual reality scenario, remote telepathic communication, our family experiences, group missing time, entities gray, white, robed, hooded, blonde hair, reptoid, brown, cat-eyed, wrinkled face, dwarf, elf. It runs the gamut too. Miscellaneous, blue, Jesus figure that shows up constantly. Hybrid, adult, black, red uniform, exams, and all that shit. So not to be disrespectful to anybody, but not anybody's going to hear what I just said, anyways. I'll be shocked if anybody. Because I know I'm a bit of a bore. But I'm a researcher. Researchers are boring. You see, with Jesus, we got 3. We'll see any more Jesus things. And then we got different activities, communications. So half the people saw Jesus. Half the people saw Jesus. Now you might think, what's the big deal about that? It's a big deal. really is a big deal. When you finally start realizing what's going on, you realize it's a real big deal. And I also think this would be a good thing for other people to follow that chart as far as questions. You know, what questions to ask. Oh, shit. Have to redo that one. Ask yourself, ask others. Data points. I think, and plus you could add to it. But I think you'll find shocking similarities in what's going on with a lot of things. By the way, this is no condemnation if anybody believes in, say, Jesus or is religious, but it is something to think about. At the bare minimum, the psychological level. So those are things to look into again. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but at least I have it there. Expanding the view. Expanding the view. A comparison of the data from these separate reports emphatically proves one point. Our current concept of the abduction experience is too small, too limited, and far too simplified. The comparative chart lists 114 elements from the reports, including details which were omitted in previous chapters because of space considerations. When the data is categorized and correlated, some surprising consistencies emerge that force the current view to expand in both quantity and quality. Before beginning the comparison, however, it should be noted again that four of the women underwent some regressive hypnosis. Beth, Jane, Angie, and Amy, with 3 different hypnotists. Out of the 114 listed details on the chart, Beth reported 87, Jane reported 77, Amy 73, and Angie 96. The other 4 women showed consistently fewer reported details, although not significantly. Polly, 67 out of 114 details, and her account. Patty had 71, Lisa had 94, and Netta had 53. Almost all the details from each of the 8 women came from pre-hypnotic recollections. In the contacts category, there are 8 different situations reported, and 7 of these 8 have been reported by all the women. These included 240 UFO sightings, missing time as a child, missing time as an adult, consciousness of an encounter, virtual reality events, telepathic communications and the extension of alien involvement into lives of other family members. 3 of them experienced missing time and abduction while with other people. The data indicates then that the phenomena is not imaginary or self-generated, that it is linked to the UFO sightings, that it involves a generational interest on the part of the aliens, and that contact may be made by remote means. The aliens category contains a surprising variety of physical types of reported, including some that are rarely mentioned elsewhere. While all 8 women encountered the gray aliens, the whites, insectoids, and the hooded figures are almost as common and turning up in 7 accounts. Blonde humanoid figures have been seen in 6 of the women, as have the cat-eyed and reptoid eye type. Half of the women reported the wrinkled-faced entity similar to a tall gray or white, as well as the shorter, often hairy creature, various referred to as a troll or dwarf, in both blue entities, and a Jesus figure had been witnessed in 3 of the women. I thought there was more than 3, but I'm going to copy these, because this is the important data that would be worth actually having a discussion about. At least that's how I see it. In addition to noting the variety of physical types, it is important to realize that every combination of these different entities have been reported working together in abduction scenarios. It is hard to conclude then that the various types are really separate groups carrying out separate functions or missions. The abductees typically report undergoing some sort of physical examination at one time or another. As researchers have long acknowledged, a comparison of the details reported in the exams categories show that 2 areas of the human body are most commonly involved: the reproductive system and the brain, which pretty much is what we're all about, isn't it? Only 5 of the women remember gynecological procedures, however, and only 3 of them report possible implanted or missing fetus. So the aliens' interest in reproduction or genetics may not be their sole purpose. While this group comprises all women, they are not only sex reporting fetal. I hope I don't have to do this all day. Implantations, extractions, as bizarre as this seems, in one man's account, he recalled an abdominal incision into which a malleable sac of tiny fetuses was placed and later surgically retrieved. Another man says that a similar fetal container was inserted rectally. More of the women report implant procedures and head operations than gynecological activity. Aneta is the only one who does not recall receiving an implant, and 5 women report some surgical activity on their skulls or brain. This activity has no apparent connection to the crossbreeding agenda and points to a program of greater complexity than the limited genetics theory. A variety of alien instruments are reported in this procedure, and the most common here are the wand type device found in 4 accounts, and the small metal box, usually black, and this reported in which is reported by 3 women. There are 4 accounts of a lady doctor present during the examination, and 3 of the women saw operations performed on other abductees during their experiences. 3 also were made to eat or drink something while in alien custody. Just like the fairies. They do that a lot too, right? The stories of them too. The most common detail of the examination scenario, however, is the report of an alien's face very close to the abductee's face, which has been experienced by all the women but Pat. Whether this is a type of examination or an exertion of mental control over the abductees isn't clear. And of course, it could be both. There is evidence that the large black glassy eyes, so familiar from Gray reports, may not be biological eyes, but instead may be coverings that perform technically able to calm the abductees and do an scan of some sort, and even, as Pat felt, film or record the data from our minds. Could be weird, worse than that. Let's see what's going on here. I think what I'll do take a break, and I'm done reading this because I got. Hopefully, I can get this done today, and which would be nice because that would mean what was that? 370 plus 155. Man, I'm a slow reader. In a week, I've read. I wanted to be able to get to the point of reading 50 pages a day, and then work on my book. But all I've done is read. That's all I've been able to do is read. So, anyways, that's 470, like 520 pages in a week, nonstop. And that's just, but with the understanding that if you don't read it out loud, it's like a half to a third amount of time reading a book, not out loud, right, but in your head. It's a lot faster. But I want to read it out loud to share my journey with you guys too. So if there's even one person that's interested, that one person might benefit from it. So, and then there also is the using my mouth, developing muscles in my mouth, or maintaining what little I have is probably the more realistic thing. Although I think I'm going to try as best I can with the next book, just do the reading for a couple hours a day out loud, and then focus on maybe a couple hours playing my guitar sometime that day, and the rest of the time playing my write my book. And then of course in all that time too I still have to be a dad, so and that's just a lot on my plate. It might not seem like a lot, and like you say, well, what's the big deal? It's just reading out loud. Well, like I said, I keep saying it's a big part of it is, well, it's multiple facets, multiple reasons for doing it. But if I don't do this, I might just lose my ability to talk completely. Which that might not be a bad thing for the rest of the world, but it's a bad thing for me. So let's see where we're at with this. So then there's the doctors present during the examinations. 3 of the women saw operations performed on other abductees during their experiences. 3 also were made to eat or drink something while in alien custody. I know I just read that. The most common detail of the examination scenario, however, is the report of an alien's face very closely abductee's face, which has been experienced by all the women but Pat. Whether this is a type of examination or an exertion of mental control over the abductees isn't clear. Of course, it could be both. There is evidence that the large black glassy eyes, so familiar from Gray's reports not to be biological eyes, but instead may be covering that performed technologically, able to calm the abductee and do a scan of some sort, even as Pat felt film or record data from our minds. Other activities besides the exams occur in abduction encounters. All of the women reported that the aliens communicated with them at some point, although not during every encounter. 7 of them recalled teaching or testing sessions during abductions. 6 reported experiencing levitation. 5 recall passing through solid objects. 4 witnessed or performed telekinesis. On the hardware side of things, 4 women were shown how to operate some of the equipment aboard the craft. And on the software side of things, 3 of them were induced to relive or envision the past time or event in their lives. Again, these activities point to an agenda more complex than crossbreeding. 6 of the women do, however, report scenes generally known as baby presentations, in which apparently hybrid infants are shown to abductees and are said to be created from some human-alien crossbreeding process. But half of the women also report being forced or induced to engage in mostly traumatic sexual activities with aliens, humanoids, and other abductees. And all these activities have little to do with crossbreeding or gathering the reproductive material. Some researchers have theorized that all such sexual scenarios are the product of mind control erotic images without substance used merely to facilitate an actual event which involves nothing more than the taking of sperm or ova. But there are problems with this theory. For one thing, although sperm gathering can be accomplished via erotically induced orgasm on the part of the male, it certainly isn't necessary for ova gathering. In fact, it is totally unnecessary. Nor does it serve any reproductive purpose for her to be compelled to masturbate, as in some abductions, as well as in cases where the person feels switched on for this purpose when no abduction is underway. Another problem is that sexual intrusions involving reproductively immature children are reported. And finally, there is clearly no sperm/ova gathering going on in those situations where abductees are forced into sexual situations together. Abductees report a wide yet consistent pattern of communications from the aliens, both in their presence and through remote contact. And most common communications focus on the origin of the human species, the special nature of the alien-abductee relationship, and of the abductee personally who has an important function to perform. The distinction of body and spirit, warnings of future global destruction, which were all reported by a majority of the women, these are not trivial subjects. It would be as dangerous to ignore these information as it would be to believe everything the aliens say. In the settings categories, there is a similar consistency of reports, including the highly controversial scenario of the underground base, present in half of the cases. Even more surprising, perhaps, is that 7 of the women saw other apparently human people in their encounters, working with the aliens aboard craft as well as in the terrestrial facilities. In 6 cases, the humans were perceived as military personnel. Many researchers have unfortunately been unwilling to take reports of human-alien collusion seriously. One researcher told me that he believed every case of human collusion could be explained as illusions perpetrated by an exclusively alien group, but all it takes to dispel this view is one confirmed case of military human involvement. And from information that has been shared with me in confidence, I am satisfied that at least one such case exists, that of Leah Halley, whose ordeal of military intrusion and threats is told in Lost Was the Key. Lost was the key, huh? Let's see if you can find it. Lost was the key. Well, it's out there. Okay. Another researcher has claimed repeatedly that none of his many investigations has produced reports or evidence of human military involvement His claim, however, has been disputed by some of the abductees with whom he has worked, who say they have indeed reported these events, only to have them discounted by the investigator. Yet the reports overwhelmingly point to actual human involvement with alien abductions. Details of reports are consistent throughout the country. The only thing that differs, finally, is the interpretation of those details by the researchers. Reports of human military involvement must be addressed with more than an unexamined dismissal, for they are as common as the baby presentation scenarios that are accepted at face value by the traditional view. Whether real or contrived, these events serve a purpose that the researchers need to discover. 6 other accounts described the abductees either viewing or being in a deserted or desert setting or on a desert-type planet, although the explanation of these scenes varies from one report to another. Within the alien facilities, 5 women saw TV-type screens, 4 saw instrument panels, 4 were shown graphs or charts, and although it isn't noted on the chart, 3 women described unusual black flexible tubing in the facility, both aboard the craft and in next page. Underground locations. Other reported details in alien settings include bodies of water or liquid. In 3 cases, as well as 3 reports of animals present. Of more concern are the 3 accounts of abductees seeing or being told of cloned human bodies. Both Lisa and Pat were shown clones of their bodies, although they were given different explanations. Similar reports come from other abductees. In one case, a man said he saw a room full of inert male and female human bodies who were beautiful and identical. The implications of such reports are enormous, considering the possible uses of aliens could make these carbon copy human bodies. The 8 women reported a number of physical effects consistent with general abduction data, but only 2 effects which were universal were patterns of unexplained bruises and particular noises in the ear or head. While the noises could be rationalized, perhaps, the bruises clearly indicate some physical interaction. The repetition of triangular marks in abductee reports may well indicate a single source of all of the marks. Other signs of physical rather than psychic or spiritual contact include 6 reports of unexplained blood on the woman's bodies and blood bedclothes, 6 reports of scoop marks, 5 women with scratches, 7 with puncture wounds. The case of actual physical contact is also bolstered by the 6 women who reported walking up with their clothes on backwards, inside out, or completely missing. The women experienced a variety of other physical reactions in addition to the eternal heard beeps and electronic type tones. All but Pat, for instance, experienced nausea during or after an encounter. The 5 reported sudden total exhaustion in which all their energy drained away in an instant. 5 women described awaking at times or feeling as if they'd been beaten. To use Aneta's term, 5 said they had episodes in which a blinding light seemed to explode in their minds. Unexplained rashes turned up in 5 of the cases, and instances of badly irritated eyes and walking with an unidentified bitter taste were both reported 4 times. I just say waking with. That's what I meant to say, waking with an unidentified bitter taste were both reported 4 times. Additionally, 2 of the women suffered unusual hair loss and unaccountable sunburns. Physical nature of the abduction scenario extended to other things in the abductee's environment. The external effects related to the phenomena are very consistent, as the chart demonstrates. Every one of the women have experienced bizarre electronic disturbances, for instance, phone disturbances, both with the equipment and the callers, and 7 out of 8 reported lights in the yard, lights in the house, voices, clicking sounds, as well as miscellaneous thumps, pops, whistles, bangs, and hums in the environment, all without explanation. Outside the house, 5 of the women have witnessed the overflight of unaccountable, unmarked, and unidentifiable helicopters, all appearing after the abductees became aware of their situations. The most consistent correlations between the women showed up in the personal response / events category. All of them suffer from chronic or frequent sleep disruption. All have undergone drastic attitude shifts, and they all feel a strong desire to live in rural locations, no matter what their previous background. 7 of the 8 women report unexplained compulsions associated with their experiences, such as Polly's compulsion at times to take children, including other people's children, to a certain spot where UFOs are often sighted, something she would not do on her own choice. And Aneta is the only one who has not reported feeling they are being prepared to carry out some unidentified task, job, or mission related to the alien agenda. 3 types of dreams show up in 7 of the reports as well. The first involves the arrival, landing, invasion of numerous UFOs on Earth. A dream reported so frequently with the same details that I refer to this as the Night of Lights from the typical description. The second dream shows scenes of coming disaster and chaos on the planet, and in some cases, the abductees are led to believe that their upcoming jobs will be carried out at the time of destruction. The third dream type is prophetic, showing evidence which comes to pass after the dream. The final category, personal background, shows, in fact, that all of the women have demonstrated above average psychic abilities. The data on the ethnic background included here has only relative importance. focusing as it does on the Celtic Native American heritages, which are more prevalent in American abduction reports than other specific ethnic groups. The abduction phenomena is global, and in any given region, the ethnicity would surely be different. What is significant, however, is the high percentage of women who have had unusual or serious gynecological problems, an indication that abduction experiences may be hazardous to their health. Two remaining aspects of personal background, childhood abuse, and family members in the intelligence community deserve special notice. Some researchers and mental health professionals unable to accept the reality of this phenomenon have offered screen memories of child abuse as an explanation for abduction memories. But as in the case of objections to a military involvement, all it takes is one abductee who suffers no abuse to explode the theory. Among these 8 women, only 3 reported childhood abuse of any kind, and their memories of these events were not repressed. Other theories believe that abduction activities is pertinent by humans rather than aliens, carrying out massive mind control experiments for some unknown purpose. They argue that the agents of this activity would have access to subjects through the families of those in the military and intelligence organizations. While it is true that most abductees have a family member in the military, this is also true of just about everyone in the country, so that cannot be a significant factor. More telling would be an inordinately high number of abductees with family connections to the intelligence community, and such cases are reported. Among the 8 women, however, there are only 2 confirmed and 1 possible with connections to intelligence work. These individuals' very unique abduction reports show such a commonality that they all could quite easily be from a single source or alliance of sources with a single specific agenda. Some of the reported details, in fact, which appear so unique in a given single case, are too striking to dismiss. One good example is not listed on the chart involves Pat and Angie, whose conscious memories and responses are very different. During Pat's childhood abduction, she asked for and was given a green healer rock as a keepsake. But when the military interrogated the family, they persuaded Pat's sister to give them the rock. In Angie's case, a green rock was also confiscated. She didn't consciously connect the beautiful green rock with alien experiences, nor could she remember precisely when and where she first got it. But Angie does remember, as a child, being approached on the playground one day by an unknown woman. The woman knew Angie's name and a few things about her, claiming to be a friend of the girl's teacher. After a brief initial chat, the woman told Angie that she knew about the green rock and asked if she could have it. Angie recalls giving her the rock during a second encounter, although the details are cloudy. There are other such minute similarities in just these 8 accounts, and the details on the chart generally are true not only for the 8 women, but also for thousands of others. There is one more set of parallels, however, which was not on the chart because it pertained exclusively to the women in this project rather than to the typical abduction situation. I was in contact with all of them separately for months before deciding to compile a book-length report about the cases. During that time, although strange things still occurred, they did not seem any different from past activities. Things changed, however, after Jane and Amy were given messages telling them to work with me specifically. I began the book project, and in the course of taking care of necessary business through the mail, it soon became clear that many of my letters to the women were being diverted. It was an annoyance, but a minor one. But then the women began having serious problems, physical afflictions of a suspiciously similar nature. Beth was first. On the night she decided to participate in the project, she phoned a friend to discuss the decision, but in the midst of the conversation, the line went dead. That night she had disturbing but cloudy dreams, and the next morning both her legs from knee to ankles were in excruciating pain for no apparent reason. And then she had a sudden frightening flashback that linked the mysterious pain with the military personnel warning her not to be part of the book. That was in early October 1993. 3 weeks later, after discussing my determination to do the project with one of the women, I went to bed in fine shape and woke up at 6 a.m. with racking spasmodic pains in both legs from my knees to my ankles. It was unbelievably bad, unlike any pain I've had before. And after swallowing ibuprofen, I hobbled back to bed and tried to sleep. I must have, for I dreamed after that, seeing myself surrounded by military personnel who were injecting something into my knees. They taunted me, saying, "Don't think you can do anything you want. This is just a little demonstration that we can bring you, literally, to your knees anytime we choose." For Beth and me, these may have been mere dreams reflecting our fears about the project, but Annette's report of experiencing the same pain after an abduction years before makes it harder to discount a connection. And on the same weekend, I had the leg pains. Both Annette and Jane, suffered unexpected gallbladder attacks, so severe that they both underwent emergency surgery at almost the same hour. Angie was the next to suffer. After an abduction in early November, she woke up with several physical symptoms, the worst of which was heavy congestion. It quickly grew worse, and in the space of less than 2 months, she had to be hospitalized. Before that time, however, her health had been remarkably pristine. It was in November, too, that Angie recalls military personnel threatening punishment if she talked to Karla Turner. Was it a real event, a VRS, or just a dream? Annetta had a similar dream shortly thereafter, in which I first discussed abandoning the project, and then military personnel arrived and interrogated her about UFOs. Lisa, too, felt a very human threat against her involvement with the book and almost decided to remove herself from it. But in the end, all the women felt that the information was too important to let intimidation, if that's what it really was, prevent its release. To conclude, then, the comparative chart shows how consistently the same details turn up in unrelated abduction scenarios, and indeed how many consistent details actually comprise the phenomena. Such reports demand that serious attention be given to uncover the nature and extent of the human activity within the abduction phenomena. The evidence further makes a strong case for a very physical, technological basis to alien-human interactions. Unless angels perform rectal probes, however, and make crank phone calls and arrange sexual liaisons in addition to their other heavenly duties, the case is very weak for this being a primary spiritual agenda. Well, I don't think there's much difference between angels and demons, to be honest with you. Just words on the paper, but the consequences seem to be about the same. The round table. When these personal accounts are brought together for an overview, the women have three major concerns. In common with many others who have been forced alien encounters, what are the aliens saying, and can we believe them? What are they doing with us technologically and psychologically? And what is the real nature of human or military involvement in the abduction activities? On this last issue, every one of the women have reported seeing other humans present in abduction situations. Amy, Angie, Lisa, Pat, and Beth recall experiences that involved military personnel, and in most instances there were aliens working with the humans. Although some of these scenes may have been alien VRS productions, other peripheral activities do indicate actual human involvement. Angie, for instance, was confronted and intimidated by uniformed men and the pickups that pinned her between them on the highway. Just hours before she had a military abduction and was threatened about talking. When Amy traveled out of state for regressive hypnosis, another suspicious event occurred. A high-ranking naval officer, a longtime acquaintance of the hypnotist's family, showed up at their home late on the night of Amy's arrival. In spite of being told that it would not be convenient to visit at that time, he proceeded to deliver the standard line that the military has no interest, much less involvement, with UFOs, aliens, or abductees. He said that in 25 years of service, he had never even heard another military person mention UFOs on or off the record, and he insisted that abductees had no business presenting their experiences to the public unless they could also offer concrete scientific evidence that anything had happened. I was present that night, and when I asked him if he actually could tell us of any military involvement with UFOs, assuming it did exist, he admitted that national security restrictions would force him to deny such involvement. When Amy left to drive home, she was followed by a state patrol car who stayed in inches from her bumper or right beside her car for many miles. The effect, of course, was extremely unnerving, and Amy felt it was meant to be an intimidation, as do those who have had military helicopter harassment, phone disturbances, and other events that seem much more human than alien in origin. If, as was mentioned earlier, there is proof in even one case that military personnel have been involved in abductions, then the other reports should not be easily dismissed. Each person must decide whether evidence is convincing on this issue, but I am satisfied that one case, Leah Halley's, is beyond question. If human agency are indeed covertly active, their involvement demands more vigorous investigations than has been done up to now. Mainstream researchers, however, show no enthusiasm for confronting possible human rights violations by human forces, perhaps because they fear personal reprisal, which, as many abductees can attest, does occur. On the issue of alien communications, there is plenty of data from all the women. Most of them have had personal messages in addition to hearing their names called. The communication that has happened when I'm awake, Lisa reported, as an example, is usually simple. They say in my head, "Turn off the lights and don't come in here." After Aneta was sexually assaulted by the humanoid in the red suit, he told her, "I'll be there to help you," which was frightening rather than reassuring given the immediate situation. And Amy had a curious message in late 1993 saying, "All will know of UFOs on the day of the big game," although which game was not identified. Some of the personal messages described previously made direct references to me. Once the women began working to investigate their experiences, Jane was told to give all her information to Karla Turner and to assist me in awakening others to the abduction phenomena. Amy was compelled to contact me by her influencing forces, and then when she consciously asked them if they had any message for me, they told her to tell me, do take care, lock your doors, it may help more than you know." The message was so absurd that Amy challenged it and was told she will know what it means. And when Amy wrote me, she did not pass along the message, although she typed it and put it away. Months later, when she was listening to a tape of a public presentation I had made, however, she heard me say that at one point I was so disheartened by the alien activity that I did not even bother to lock my doors. Shocked by that correlation, she finally told me about the message she had gotten earlier, and when Polly asked her spirits, as she called the unseen communicators, about this book project, she was given a lengthy reply. In part, they said that the book is a journey into another level of mind, and that my books are a part of the much bigger work from which she cannot be separated, an expansive work of love resting on a solid base. It is impossible not to wonder what these specific personal references mean. They certainly show that some force or group is aware of the connections between the women and my research, which may account for the helicopter flights and telephone interference so many of us have had during the phone conversations with Angie. In fact, as we discussed, one alien group's claim to originate in Cassiopeia, I'm not saying this right, Cassiopeia, fuck, I can't say the word, sorry. It's just there and I just can't put it together. Tongue-tied. Cassiopeia. Say it now. Say it now. Oh, shit. Just make it easy on me, will you?
Confusing name from Greek. Mythology, also from astronomy. This was a queen in ancient Greek mythology. How do you say it? Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia. And now you know.
Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia. Sounds like a urinary disease. Apparently she's a Greek goddess. Cassiopeia, which is interesting. They claim originated from Cassiopeia was an astronomical reference, right? And then a Greek goddess name. Ironic, isn't it? Talking to women and giving that name. A man's voice interrupted to say, there's a lot of them out there, and we know where they come from, and then the voice was gone. These references also demonstrate foreknowledge of certain events or the ability to direct events for whatever gave Amy the message about my locking the door. Seems to have known she would later, much later, hear a tape of my remarks. These specific references connect our separate experiences within a large organized agenda. That much is clear, although the coordinators of this activity are not, and it seems to be quite long-term. These activities are not, it seems to be quite a long-term project. Many of the women had alien communications very early in their lives. Annetta reported being told as a child that the children must be protected. Amy had messages and ideas impressed into her mind from as young as 4. Like Polly, she felt the impact of these influences in her early teen years. She also felt that the aliens implanted or stored information within the subconscious and packets of knowledge reminiscent of packages of knowledge the aliens told me I possessed in 1980. Throughout their lives, several women recalled teaching or training communications. For Amy, these include information about various aspects of physics, as with Polly, as well as lessons of telekinesis and penetrating solid objects. Angie's training has focused on using her mental powers, and Netta's propelled her to study useful survival skills. This training or programming of abductees is meant to serve some purpose, but we have only the aliens' claims for what the purpose may be. Much of what the aliens have communicated has affected the woman's attitude on a variety of subjects. In childhood, Amy witnessed an apparent VRS designed to destroy their faith in traditional religion, and Polly reported lessons on changes in allegiances. Annetta, Jane, and Amy also have come to feel suspicious of temporal governments, and suspicious that Jane says the suspicion that Jane says was fostered by the aliens. Such an attitude adjustment is clearly an intrinsic part of the abduction agenda, pointing to a much more involvement and disturbing program than the mere taking of genetic material to revive, I can't say it, revive a degenerative alien race. Their actions concern changing our belief systems as much as working for whatever reason with our bodies, and we do not know the motivation for this targeting of religion and government. Well, probably because they're both lies. That's what it comes down to. And it's truth. On the subject of human genesis, the aliens often say that they are our creators, as in Angie's case, and statements about altering our species were also made to Lisa. The most provocative message given to Amy indicated a surprise on the part of the aliens that Amy had clearly seen the situation already. Did you think that this was all by accident? She was asked, as the aliens presented the concept of the Earth as a cosmic zoo. Such indoctrination serves to reduce our concept of human sovereignty, as well as to bind us to them in a subservient position as a possession. While some people accept this relationship as fact and thus allow that the aliens can legitimately do with us what they please, there are others of us who feel we possess an inherent sovereignty and a right to exist without interference, no matter what our genesis. Their claims to be our creators have never been more than mere claims. Anyway, unless there is proof somewhere, as a few researchers report from intelligence and military insiders, as for the information of the aliens themselves, they are less forthcoming. Lisa was told that there are many divisions of the beings, and Jane has observed that while some of them are interdimensional, as Polly also believes, others are actually interplanetary travelers. An origin of Cassiopeia was stated by Angie, and although the aliens said their group had long ago made a home for themselves on our planet, Beth was told only that the aliens are here for study and to avert the destructive process that humanity is bringing upon the world. The most extreme communication of origin, however, was given to Pat. She was told that the aliens are angels, although not as we've been taught to think of them, and that they will be responsible for the changing of human bodies at the time of resurrection. Jane, conversely, has been made to see from her experiences that God of the Bible is not the supreme being we have been taught to envision. And it turns out that's the case. What do you do about that now? A common communication has been that the abductees are to come together or find others like themselves. In fact, Angie reported being brought to a group of chosen ones in another underground facility. There were others trained like me. Amy said she was told in 1989, and we would come together soon. Now it is time that we find each other. Beth was told that she and others must work as spiritual beings for the good of humanity. And the aliens told Jane that all good people on Earth must come together to resist what is coming. It isn't certain, of course, that all the communications have come from a single source, and in fact, there are frequently contradictions and inconsistencies from the case to case. The future planetary events are also a major topic for the aliens, and it is interesting to note the phrases and images they use here. For Jane, the aliens have used terms like the awakening to indicate coming changes in the world, cultures, and consciousness. This sounds positive and peaceful enough, but both Amy and Polly have had told of a coming Armageddon. Although Amy was told that Armageddon will not be as people think it will be, Angie's abductors say that the filth and evil in the world will be cleansed as we are subtly changed. But for Annetta and Elisa, the future changes are shown as disasters for which they must prepare to survive here on Earth. And Pat has been shown scenes of the return of Jesus, accompanied by spaceships, aliens preceding the bad times on Earth, which will destroy many of those who are not rescued. Indeed, to Amy, Beth, Jane, and Polly, the communications have indicated a war of good and evil underway, in which we have a part to play. As for the aliens' promised assistance, Lisa has said simply, why should we believe they can fix our problems when they can't even control the abuse of aliens among them? How do the women feel about their alien communications? Jane is inspired by much of what she's told, but she has not been able to initiate the communications herself. In fact, she feels that the aliens have hidden in a way behind their contacts. We are not seeing the true intelligence behind all these scenes. And she once said, Polly says that when she considers all she has been told, she concludes that in reality they have told us nothing. And Amy has complained that in spite of all she's been told and taught, the aliens don't give practical information. Angie has come to be suspicious of much of what she has been told. There is no reason I should trust those aliens, she wrote, any more than I would trust my own kind. And Annetta has echoed that feeling. I am always amazed when I get any information from them at all, she said. I really don't know if someone who would abduct a person could be trusted to give a truthful answer to any question. The second issue focuses on the alien technology as observed by the abductees. Besides the various instruments used in the examinations, most of which are completely foreign, it is curious to note how often these aliens employ quite familiar equipment, especially needles and injections. Indeed, some researchers have said that this use of mundane technology argues against an alien force and toward covert human activity. Angie, Beth, and Polly all report getting shots, and other women have sometimes found injection punctures without remembering how they got them. But the most common technological device are not all the human-like, are not all human-like. The probes, their descriptions are often very similar small balls of light floating and bouncing through the house. But in Amy's case, the probe was rather more spidery in appearance. As mentioned earlier, there is a strong interest in human brains evinced by the aliens' activity. Amy, Angie, Beth, and Lisa, and Pat, and Polly all reported having some operation performed on we got 4 more pages. I'm going to take a break. By far the most alarming evidence of alien technology concerns the new bodies and clones they manufacture. Whether these are really bodies of a future human resurrection, as Pat was told, remains to be seen. But other explanations have been given. In a case privately reported, for instance, a man was told that a duplicate of his body could be used to replace him if he didn't cooperate with the aliens. Lisa, too, was told that other people wouldn't be able to distinguish her cloned body from the original doppelganger, as it is, if they choose to replace her. Angie was shown a cloned infant as part of a novel breed the aliens are producing. Polly has a different take on what may be going on with the baby's presentations. What's the point, she asked? Not to nurture this crossbreed infant, not to teach the ETs about emotional love and physical bonding, but to blow our goddamn minds. They use our bodies to get to our minds and emotions. She doesn't believe they care anything about our bodies except that we care very much, and so that is why our bodies are important to them, to get at our caring. This view is echoed by Angie when she was shown one of her hybrid offspring. She felt that the presentation was a test of her rather than anything to do with the baby itself. From that particular experience, I learned that the hybrid presentation literature is not a bonding exercise, she concluded. It really is an act of scrutiny against the mother's measure of courage and understanding. It has a lot to do with mental pain and how mothers deal with it. Concerning the clones or hybrids themselves, she was further told that their souls are recycled, that they are regenerated many times. This fits with the other reports in which abductees saw the aliens destroy fetuses and were told they are not really alive and that their physical material will be used, not wasted. In fact, these and other reports point to the use of human genetic material to produce the gray workers, quite possibly biological robots rather than living soul-inhabited entities. The other major technological question concerns the implants, for which the aliens have given various explanations. When Jane received an ear implant, she was told that it affects brain chemicals and certain subtle functions. The aliens told Angie that the implants act as a magnet and pull information from people's brains, as well as enhancing the use of special senses and sending instructions. But Amy was given very different information about the implants by the masked alien who removed hers. Besides being shown where the implants are placed and the fact that they operate on the abductee's own electrical brain activity, she was also told how the implants are used to control abductees, punish them, and even kill them. And although no one was told that the implants are used to create the virtual reality scenarios, that possibly must be considered. The technology behind the VRS is a subject upon which the aliens have been silent, but the effects of the VRS are apparent. Only Amy has been given any information about the images created by the aliens. And she was told that they use frightening images to control. One of the aliens told Angie that the military uses illusions, but this was not explained. Several of the women have their own ideas about what's behind the virtual reality scenarios, besides the control factor mentioned as by Amy. Annetta believes that there may be a positive purpose for some of the VRS activity. I suspect a lot of these encounters, she said, are alien-induced dreams for the purpose of making sure you feel comfortable with them. Lisa said, I believe something I made to dream odd things to see my reaction to them. And Jane, too, believes that the aliens sometimes create frightening setup scenes, absurd stuff, which has made her uneasy. I'm afraid, she confided, we might find that intelligence behind the illusions so cold and personal that it would be unbearable. Given all their experiences, what do women themselves think about the aliens, their encounters, and the agenda to come? Pat is the only one who had unequivocally positive feelings and trust in the aliens before her encounter with the original Oriental girl in the underground facility. That is, for her perception of them has been shaped since her childhood to see them as angelic beings. Jane, Angie, and Beth all recognize positive and negative forces among the aliens. And while Amy has been threatened and silenced through the years by the aliens, she still says, I don't think all aliens are bad. I don't even consider the Greys that are abusing humans and other life forms as bad. They have their reasons and think differently from us, so they probably do not understand our feelings. Angie goes further in saying perfectly real aliens exist out there, and it seems one kind wants to help us and another kind wants to deceive us. Annetta has recognized differing agendas among the groups who have interacted with her. She thinks the Greys care very little about humans personally. The humanoids are involved with sexual aspects of the phenomena, for her conscious recollections at least, and the Tans are concerned to bind us to them through our emotions. Feed upon our emotions. louche. Polly has expressed many ideas about the alien agenda. I know many feel they aliens need reproductive material from us, she wrote, but the way it feels to me is sophisticated mind game. Although there may be an aspect that we are a resource, it feels like a highly sophisticated mind game. She recognizes, as has Netta, that the mind game can be very effective. Intellectually, I can say. They are out to control. Don't trust them. Polly has confided, but Karla is emotionally and deep in my mind. I trust certain ones, them more than anything else in the universe, and I have been confronted bit by bit the evidence that they made me feel this way for their purposes, to fulfill their agenda, not for my good. The depth of my trust, I think, is more frightening than the depth of my fear. Like Annetta, she recognizes the directed nature of her response. Their consistent theme is control, she continued. It is maddening to realize that although we strive to empower ourselves and know what we can claim and enforce our own mental sovereignty, still so often they slip by our defenses, our own parts of us, which by rights we should have in our own conscious possession. In spite of what some prominent abduction theorists tell us about avoiding thinking in terms of good and evil, or positive and negative, when it comes to the aliens, this simply cannot be done, nor should it be. For these women, for my husband and myself, for all the abductees, knowing that we have been made a part of this agenda, and that we, next page, have been implanted, trained, and programmed to participate in some future scenario. How can we not ask what purpose our minds, body, and souls will be used? How can we put aside our rationality, our learned wisdom, our ethics, to trust the words and actions of beings whose nature is kept hidden from us and whose agenda involves the entire world? More immediately, what can be done to alter the abduction situation? Is there any sign that things are changing? The answer is a callous yes. There is evidence of a change in the standard operating procedure of abduction events over the last 40-50 years. On the part of the aliens, there seems to have been a quantitative and qualitative increase in abduction activity since the mid-1980s in this country, whereas most evidence in the past were deeply suppressed in the abductees' memories. By 1986, hundreds, if not thousands, of abductees began to remember past experiences and to be more currently aware of new ones. Either the aliens were not doing a good job of suppressing the memories, or something was triggered to wake up, call in the abductees. Further, more abductees were reporting a variety of alien physical types, not just small gray workers typically encountered in the past. An argument can be made that this awareness was initiated deliberately by the aliens as part of the preparation for the predicted coming global event in which abductees will be activated to perform their tasks. But a different argument can also be made that abductees were awakening up or waking up on their own, many times seeing through the illusions and virtual reality scenarios, as Aneta did when she told the Tan entity who was projecting love towards her. Too bad it isn't real, and several recent reports, in fact, abductees have penetrated the aliens' illusions and refused to cooperate as the aliens would have had them do. The growth and changes resulting from the alien contact may yet prove to be a double-edged sword, giving abductees a heightened awareness and psychic perception that allows them to evaluate and react to their situations in a way they could not have done before. It has been said that any species in an environment of extreme stress and questionable survival may develop new coping mechanisms to ensure that the species continues to exist. Could this be part of what is happening now? Certainly an intrusion of an advanced controlling force on a widespread scale could generate enough species stress to trigger new response mechanisms. Studies of human consciousness development studies of human consciousness development theory theorize that the emergence of bicameralism, the division of the psyche into conscious and subconscious components, occurred relatively recently in human evolution, perhaps no more than 5,000 years ago. In a fairly sudden way and with no known precipitating cause, could it be that we are once again experiencing a psychic change, a movement towards tricameralism that will give us a new form of conscious perception? Are we developing new abilities to recognize energies and entities which have thereto been beyond our ken, and thus new ways to respond? The last page. Many people who see alien interaction as a positive event for humanity point out to the growth and changes abductees often evidence as proof that the aliens are working to elevate the psychic abilities of our race. Angie has said, echoing the reports of numerous other abductees, I have grown in many ways. My IQ and receptiveness to learning has improved a lot, and I am more in tune to nature as well as myself and other human beings. Defenders of alien interaction claim that these sorts of changes are a deliberate product of the contact experience, evidence of aliens' benevolent interest in humanity. It is odd, however, that such growth seems to come to abductees only after they are aware of their experiences. If indeed this growth is produced by the aliens, then it should have been there long before the abductees were conscious of their encounters, since in almost every reported case there are signs of alien involvement since early childhood. The psychic increase in growth in perceptive abilities, however, occurring after the abductee is aware of the intrusions, may indicate a different genesis and an internal evolution of conscious stemming from our need to know what is and has been done to us and what we could do to meet the situation in a more empowered position. Survivors of great catastrophes such as hurricanes, earthquakes, and war may be crushed by the impact of these events, losing their usual ethical considerations and sense of self that is the basis of psychic stability. or they may find a new resilience rising to the occasion and reacting with abilities they don't know they possessed. Given the vast intrusive activities of the abduction phenomena, we as a species may well feel such a threat or stress that a mutual or evolutionary leap is occurring today, developing a tricameralism of the mind, allowing us to confront the intruders and see them more clearly than they have allowed in the past. On the basis of many recent abduction reports, there is hope that our species is awakening. And that is it. That is the end of the reading. I take it inside the Alien Human Abduction Agenda by the late Dr. Karla Turner Ph.D. There's a lot to chew on there. I question seriously that they're dealing with aliens, but then what the hell do I know? It's just the latest placeholder, the latest name. They used to be called angels and demons. Do you know what I mean? Now they're called aliens. What are they actually? Another part of the big shit show? The grand illusion that we all live under? No one knows. It's just a bunch of confusion. Endless confusion. Thank you for listening, any of those that did. And yeah, my next reading, my ears are all clogged up. For my next reading, hopefully will be The Eighth Tower. By John A. Keel, and that should be, I think it's his best book that I've read yet. 50 years ago, the insights that he has, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant in my opinion. But what do I know? I just, another lost soul swimming in a fishbowl like the rest of you.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you are going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
Take it slow. Are you searching?